In this video, we're going to show you how to throw a bowl within a bowl. So 2 pieces, this one is thrown on a bat and then this one is thrown on a hump. This, we are going to be using the green bats, and sometimes these green bats pop up a little bit. It's usually tighter on one side. What you can do is just take a smidge of clay, like just a smidge of clay, and you push it in, and then down. You only need that if it feels like it's popping up, and you don't need big hunks, just a little bit. Go in and then down. We're also going to be using a firefly. So we have 2.5 pounds of clay here. We're going to make our centered piece of clay a little bit flatter than maybe what we normally do. So pay attention, because we all want to throw these exactly the same. Pay attention to even this. Okay? So even though we're calling these bowls, they're going to have a flat bottom, so that we don't have to trim on the bottom. So center hole, pulling my floor, being mindful of how close I am to the bat. And we're going to pull it out the floor, maybe about a finger thickness. So I want this floor to be about that wide. We need to flatten the floor. And when you're flattening the floor, you're also compressing the clay to help prevent S-cracks. So I'm going for the middle, out to 3 o'clock, making sure this is flat. All right, on to pulling the walls. This is gonna be a flat bottom bowl. So I'm pushing in down here at the bottom, because that's where our thickness is. And as I'm coming up, I'm starting to round it a little bit. When you get to the top, let it go around a few times. Again, pushing in towards the inside finger. We're not making these really thin because we do want them to be durable. So I'm gonna check it with my firefly to make it a little bit taller, and then we want the interior rim right here to be out here. So I need to make it just a smidge taller and a little bit wider. It's important that we all are making them the same size. Again, I need to go a little bit taller, a little bit wider. So we will have custom ribs to get this curve. All for now, I'm using a metal rib. I have my rib curved. I'm supporting it on the inside. So I want people to be mindful of right here. We want to have a curve here. We don't want to have an angle or see any shadows. So as you're pulling this, just make sure that that's a nice, smooth transition there. So to give this piece a little bit more of a contemporary look, we're gonna flatten the rim. So I'm gonna hold on to it with my pincher fingers, and they have slip on them. And I'm gonna take my index finger, just compress that rim going down. And go back in with your rib to get rid of the slip here, and to make sure this is a nice, smooth, there's no transition there. Might have to work back and forth a little bit. Now, we want to have the least amount of fingerprints as possible on these pots, because that's the less we'll have to clean up. So I'm cleaning up my hands, squeezing out my sponge all the way. I'm gonna get all the slip off. Get all the slip off on the inside. The last thing you should do is double check to make sure that it fits. Okay, so now on to trimming. So I like to dip my trimming tool in the water, and I'm gonna use my hand on the inside so that I can kind of press against this. Again, we're not trimming these on the wheel. We're not trimming feet on these. So we want to make sure that the walls are even. If we were to cut this in half, this would not have any extra weight right here. And having your hand on the inside helps support that, so you're not just pushing the clay in, that you're actually clay. I'm gonna go in and I'm going to do a bit of an undercut to get even more clay off and to cast that little shadow there. But the thing with this is that we want this to look totally smooth. So see how there's like a shadow here and a shadow here? I'm gonna take the rib and again, supporting it on the inside, I'm gonna get my rib underneath there. I'm kind of pressing into the rib from the inside hand. See how now there's no shadows, no extra lines? Try to do this. Put your angle side here and just one little, just an extra clay. All right, so that is how you're gonna do the big bowl. When you go to take your bat off, please, please, please take this extra clay off and make sure that your bat is clean. Otherwise, when they're drying on the drying rack, we don't want crusty clay to fall into the pots below. So make sure this is all cleaned up. I kind of get underneath this lip. So none of that crusty clay falls into pots below. So when you're throwing for production, it's really important that everybody's throwing the same, using the same tools, but also that the rim is the same. I feel like when you're looking at production pots, the rim is the first thing you can tell if different potters did it. We really want to make sure that the rims are the same. So on your big Firefly, you're going to have a mark that's going to show you how thick the rim should be. So make sure you're double checking that to make sure that the rims are all the same thickness and that they're flattened out straight. All right, so for throwing the small bowls, we're gonna throw those off a hump. You know, anywhere 4 or 5 pounds of clay. We can get quite a few off. So you cone this up to make the top of your hump. Really, only the top of the hump needs to be centered. And we don't need a lot of clay for this little bowl. We're actually gonna do, so like this would be a backwards D, right? We're gonna close this in a little bit. So let's say I'm using my joints here on my finger. I'm gonna have my index finger at this joint, and that's how wide this piece of clay is gonna be, okay? So it might be a little bit more than that. And then we're gonna go 3 fingers down. So that's how wide it is, and then 3 fingers down, and then that 3rd finger, we're gonna make our indent. That is our false floor. Now going in, so I like to keep my pinky here at all times so I kind of know where the false floor is. Go in at an angle like we do bowls. Make sure it's nice and round on the inside. And then here's our Firefly for this. So here's the height from there to here, and here's the width. So starting down here, where that false floor is, I'm gonna squeeze that clay and bring it up into the bowl. So it needs to be a little bit wider. I'm just gonna bring this out just a tad. Okay, that looks pretty good. So again, we're gonna flatten this rim. So holding out with yours, flattening that rim. And we want it to be about the same thickness as the big bowl. It could be just a smidge thinner. You're gonna take your metal rib, make sure it's clean. You're gonna curve this, supporting it on the inside to make sure we have a nice clean curve here. These little bowls we want to be nice and round. Then you're going to take your wooden knife And we're gonna kind of trim this on the wheel. So again, my inside hand is supporting this, so supporting the clay so that as I cut it away, it's not just pushing the clay in. Somebody get that? So here we go. Rounding this out. Feel like it's a little thick there, so I'm gonna try to take a little bit more off, okay? Kind of pushing the clay down as you do that. And then you're gonna go in, if you need to, like if you made any lines when you did that, you can go back in with your rib. Every time you do something, you have to double check the measurements. Okay, this is how you cut this off. Go in straight. Don't go in at an angle. With your wooden knife, you're gonna go in straight. Check your floor. You're gonna go in straight. You have to have this indent right here in order to cut it off evenly. And again, we want to get rid of as much slip as possible because that's going to prevent any finger marks that we'll have to clean up later. All right, so wire tool in there, both sides. We're going to yank it out quick as we spin. So spin just a smidge and yank. So I want to show you the bottom of this bowl. It's almost completely round, okay? Because we don't want to have this weird like angle when we do this next part. So for this next part, we're gonna kind of just slump this in. Actually, this part of your hand works really good to just slump it in. See how I just did that? Just slumped it in, okay? And then we're gonna place the bowl on that rib. Now, since we're putting them together when they're so wet, we don't have to slip and score them, but we do need to compress them together. So as I'm holding this underneath here, I'm going to use my thumb and press a little bit, not enough to like make any indents, but press a little bit there. And then underneath, I'm going to push this clay up into the bowl. And I'm actually doing it quite gently. Like I'm not making the rim any thinner. I'm just making sure that there's no gaps there and that it's fitting right around that small bowl. Then we're gonna take a sponge. And this is where, you guys, we want to touch it the least amount possible. But we're gonna take a sponge and put a sponge there to support it. The sponge will flex as the pot dries, which is essential so the little pot doesn't crack off. Take your wire tool, cut your pot off, and place it on the pot.